Hello and welcome to today's MSSQLTIPS.com webcast, Improve SQL Server Data Quality in SSIS. In today's session, longtime MSSQLTIPS.com author Koen Verbeeck will be walking through numerous demos on Melissa solutions for SSIS to address common data quality issues faced by numerous organizations. Today's session is very hands-on. Koen is going to have a lot of demos and a lot of very detailed explanations, so please stay tuned. In terms of housekeeping items, please keep in mind today's session will be recorded and a follow-up email will be sent to all attendees after the webcast to continue your learning. If you have any technical difficulties or questions for Koen during the webcast, please post them in the Q&A portion or go to webinar controls, and we'll definitely have Koen answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A portion of today's webcast. Koen, can you please take it away from here and help educate the community?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the introduction. So hello, good evening in my time zone, and good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are around the globe. So welcome to today's webinar about improving data quality using the Melissa data tools in SQL Server integration services. So as the title implies, I'm going to talk a little bit how we can improve data quality using external tools in this case. So not integrating services out of the box, but using a third-party provider, in this case, Melissa Data. In integration services, and for this session, I already assume that you know what integration services is. I'm not going to explain what a package is or a control flow or data flow. I already assume that you know how integration services works. All right, so let's get started. So the agenda for today is going to give a very quick introduction to Melissa Data. I'm going to talk about how we can install the products into integration services, and then it's demos and slides accompanying those demos. Right, so very hands-on today. So a very quick slide with my contact information. So my name is Koen Verbeeck. I work as a senior BI consultant for a company called AE in Belgium, Europe. You can contact me on LinkedIn. I have my own blog at sqlcover.com, or you can also find me on Twitter. You can see my handle at the top left corner. All right, so I'm from Belgium, as I mentioned, so this means I like beer, I like French fries, and I like chocolates as well. All right, so who are Melissa Data? So I took this from their website. They are the address experts. So they have very good tools that help you to validate, clean, and parse data according to address data, but not only address, as we will see in the demos, but also stuff like names, like personal names, first name, last name, emails, phone addresses, and stuff like that. They have been around for quite some time. I've been working in BI for 12 years now, and ever since I started working in BI, I've learned about Melissa. Okay, they do some stuff with addresses and they sell reference data sets and stuff like that. Even back in the day with Power Query, when it was still in preview, and I think it was called Data Explorer at the time, you could download reference data sets and you could buy reference data sets from the marketplace. And I still remember that Melissa, I think, was already selling address data on the Microsoft marketplace. So they're really, as the title says, experts when it comes to address data. All right, so again, another slide from their website. So as I mentioned before, they don't only do addresses, they only do also, for example, email verification, geocoding enrichments, which I think is very useful, and I will touch on this in the demo, identity verification. So it's not just parsing data, so you get some inputs in your integration services packages from whatever source, but it also validates data. Like, I really think this is a good first name and last name, and it can also enrich the data. For example, say, I think this is a male person or a female person. For address data, they can also give extra data for the property or the neighborhood. Census data mainly works well in the US and Canada because they have the most reference data from over there. So let's start with installing the MD tools. They just basically you download them from their website, and it's the basic next, finish installation. So I just click on I accept the agreement, and then you say where do you want to install the data quality components, and then you have to choose which version of integration service you want to install the components into. So as you can see, my laptop, I had 2017 and 2019 installed, so I could choose between those two, and I chose for the most recent one. And as you can see, Melissa Data has been around for integrated services 2005, which is quite some time ago. Right, then you enter your license key, and then you choose which components you want to install. As you can see, there's one giant component, so it's a 2 GB download, and the reason for this is the top one, the contact verify, has an on-premises reference database. So it has a small database, about 2 gigs in size, which it uses to validate address data, for example. So this means it's on-premises, it's very fast, and it uses this internal database. And I assume every time you update your components, this database will get updated as well. And you can see all the other components are much smaller in size. Some components, you might think, okay, they are doing the same things. You have like contact verify and personator, and they can both handle name and address data, for example. So it kind of depends on what you want to achieve. So one is more just parsing data, while other, like the personator, can actually validate using the web service. Is this a real person in the real world? So not just parsing data, but actually validating. And the same with addresses, they can also validate, yes, this is a real address, just not some made up address which just looks like a real address, but it actually exists. Sorry. And then you have the US and Canada components, and then you have the global components. So there are components specific for US and Canada, and then you have components like personator world. We will work with global data from anywhere around the world. And then it's just okay, finish, and it will install everything on your machine. Once it's installed, you can find everything in the data flow toolbox. So there are no control flow components, they're all data flow components, and some of them are on premises, while other use web services, as I mentioned before. And of course, you need the correct license. I'm not a licensing expert. I'm not gonna go into detail about licensing. I'm just gonna say, okay, depending on your license, you can use certain features of those web services or not. In my case, for example, I can use one component to validate address data, but I cannot use it to validate personal data, for example. So that would need another license. As you can see in the screenshot on the left, just everything is installed in the integrated services toolbox in the data flow, and they all start with MD for Melissa Data, of course. All right. So, and I'll show this in the demo as well. For each component, you can go to an advanced configuration, and there is a test configuration button, which will allow you to test if you can actually access the web service, and it will also verify, do you have the correct license? And there you can see which actual features you can use, right? So as I mentioned, some components only work with US or Canada data, other components are global. Now you can check on the documentation on the wiki site of Melissa Data, what is exactly supported for your country or not. And I just took a very small screenshot. The list of countries is of course much longer. And you can see, for example, here a portion that says, if you have geolocation, so if you want to have longitude and latitude, how precise is it gonna be? And you have a code like AV2 or AV3, and how higher the code, how precise it is. So you can see, for example, on the Allen Islands, it's much better than Afghanistan, for example. And of course, Antarctica is also apparently not that precise. But anyway, so you're there on the website, you can check how well Melissa Data will work for your country. All right, so let's get started with the first demo. All right, so I'm just gonna go to Visual Studio, and I have some data flow components, and the first one we're gonna do is verify addresses. So we'll wait till it's loaded. And here I'm just reading some addresses. I'm just gonna show you how they look like. Here you go. And they're almost all existing addresses, which I just put a couple of errors in it just to test how well Melissa Data would handle it. And they're all from Belgium. The reason why is because I wanted to test out if it's really working with global data or not. Because typically when you go on the web, you will see all demos using data from the United States, especially when you see Microsoft demos, and it always works really perfectly. But I just want to check, does it really work with global data? I just took all addresses from Belgium. So they're all existing addresses, but I did some special things, like, for example, I abbreviated here. So STR is short for street. Here, this one is an apartment, a building over here, and Kessel is actually, how they call it in English, a dependent location of Leuven, of this city over here, but it has a different postal code. While this one, for example, Tisselt, is also a dependent locality of Willebroek, and they have the same postal code. Just to make everything confusing in Belgium, so dependent localities can have the same postal code as the locality they belong to, but it doesn't have to be, just to make everything interesting, of course. And then we have AV, which stands for avenue, and here, this one, the 666, it doesn't exist. Like in Church Street 666, it doesn't exist in Leuven. The numbers don't go that high. So I'm just interested, how will Melissa data handle an address which the street exists, but the house number doesn't? So I'm gonna close this one. And here we have the component itself. And we just go to the file to show you the advanced configuration. Here I can choose if it's cloud, on-premises, or hybrid. I only test the cloud option. And if you go to test configuration, it will make contact with the web service. And here you can see, okay, you can do address service, phone service, and email service. But for the name, it doesn't belong to my license. So I know which parts I can use of this component. All right, so I go to the address. And here I just have one field, which is input field. You can have multiple fields, but in my case, it's just one field, one giant field with all of the address information. I have to specify for which country. It sort of takes as a default, which is specified over here and over here. So I think it might be a best practice if it's possible to separate your incoming data per country, and then you will get much better results, right? Because don't forget, some cities have the same names in different, they exist in different countries. For example, Hoboken exists in Belgium, but they also have a city, Hoboken, in the United States. So you need to be a little bit careful about it. Don't forget to go to the additional configuration, and here you specify the output. So here you say, okay, when you have parsed the address, put it in those fields. So I have the first line of my address and the second line, give me the country, also give me the latitude, the longitude. So this is data that doesn't exist in the input data. So this is enrichment that Melissa data will give to me. So it says, okay, these are dependent localities and stuff like that. Administrative area, which is, I think in most countries, like the province or the state or something like that. Postal code, then a formatted address. So it's something that you can use to send out letters, for example, and give me the country code and so on. And I think, and this depends on how well it works for your country, you can have many, many more additional output fields. So we can have like, what is the building, the subpremises, what is the sub-administrator, all kinds of things, of which the most I don't really know what it means, but it's definitely, it can definitely be very useful. And here you have, again, more information, but I think those are for United States only. So this is the configuration. Here I can just configure the pass-through, say, okay, these are my input columns, and after this data flow component, I want to still have them, and then you just select all of the columns that you want to keep. And then we have output filter. And here I can say, okay, give me an output column, which is called MD results, which will have all the result codes for that specific line. Now, what are those result codes? So you can also specify filters, and if I just put this one to custom, you can create your custom filter. And here I can see all of the different result codes. So it also says, okay, address is verified, and the specific code says, okay, it's fully verified to this specific level, so premises, or even sub-premises, which is the highest level, or only to the administrative area, which is like state or province, or like the town, and so on and so on. And then you have like error codes, and then it says the AC codes are like, I changed something or I corrected something, and so on. So you have lots of different codes that the component will return for you. And you can create multiple outputs depending on those codes. You can say, okay, give this first output, I want to have fully verified data, like data, Melissa data is sure that it exists, give me that in output 1. Output 2 says, okay, it changed some data, but now it's pretty sure. So like the first one are like, this is 100% okay. The second output is like maybe okay. And then the errors you put in output number 3. So these are all things that you can do using this component. All right, so now I'm just gonna run this task, and we'll just take a look at the output of the component. Here you go. It's Visual Studio starting, always takes a little bit. So here we have our data flow component. So here you can see the input, the formatted output. And here I can already see what it did. So here it says, okay, I didn't have a city over here, but he recognized the postal code. So he added it over here, Wrocław, which is correct. He knows like that STR is the shorthand for street, and he actually translated it correctly. So it's in Dutch. So color me impressed with that one. He also realized that Kesselo over here is part of Leuven, also correct. Again, impressed. He also knew that AV was short for avenue. He also knew that Tisselt is part of Willebroek. For some reason, he didn't add the postal code, so a little room for improvement there. But again, impressed that he knows that one is part of the other. And here he says, okay, this house number, it doesn't exist, and he indicates it over here. Here he just gives a range like something is wrong over there. And then you get all those extra columns over here. He gives the provinces, which are all correct, by the way. And this is data that was not there in the input. So Melissa data added it to the output, and he did some verification of that data. You get your latitude and longitude. And here we have all of the result codes, which I will discuss in the slides. So having those longitude and latitude, we can just plot them on a map, and I can say, okay, they're all pretty much correct. Like only real thing that he missed was like Hoogstraat, which is actually over here, but he didn't really know because he didn't have postal code. So just draw like the center of the town over here. But I think in most cases it's fairly accurate. Like it's accurate within a mile. So again, I'm pretty much impressed with the results. So all the other dots are really accurate at their location. So but as a BI analyst developer, I'm really satisfied with the results of the longitude and latitude over here. And he also did some verification, like, oh, this address it doesn't really exist, but he knows, okay, it should be around somewhere over here. Right. Let's go back to the slide. So again, yeah, that's the input. I explained to you how we could configure everything, how we could do the result codes and the outputs. And just to give you an idea what those result codes are, so it says, for example, okay, I changed or added the postal code, I added the province, I changed or added the location, and so on and so on. So you have different codes for that, and you can create custom outputs for those. So I'll only have, if something is changed, put it in this specific output. For example, verified is probably where we're most interested in, because it says, okay, partially verified, it says, oh, it looks like a real address, but I can't really verify if it exists. If it's go to the locality level, it means, okay, I just know the town where it's in, for example, or know the tenant locality where it's in. While if it's fully verified to the premises level, which is the best you can get for Belgium, for example, it means, okay, we know this is an existing address in Belgium. If you will send a letter to it, it will actually arrive at some house or building or whatever. And then you get like similar codes for geocoded. So okay, the rooftop level again is the best you can get. It says, okay, it really actually pinpoints on the map where that building is. And then we get one error code says, okay, the premises number is invalid. So Melissa data will indicate, okay, this one, it doesn't really exist. So I'll just direct it to the street, but I don't know where the actual building is. All right, so this was address data. Let's take a look at the next one. Here we go. Just gonna stop this over here. And let's go to names. So here we go. And I, again, just one input field with all of the data. And I was just, again, toying around, see what the tools can do with my messy data. So this is my name, and then my name where I switched first name and last name. Then it's like a typical female name in Belgium, then a typical English name. And like Bruce Wayne, because I'm a huge Batman fan, but once spelled incorrectly, once with a comma in between. Then we have like doctor, so we have a prefix. Here we have a prefix that only exists in Belgium. It means engineer. Here we have a suffix. And here we have like two persons. So sometimes it's like a family. So it's like Mr. and Mrs. Tom and Ann Smith. So both persons live at the same address. And the tool can handle it. So I'm just gonna see how can he separate them, or does he go right? And of course, when you have people filling out surveys, there are always those jokers like with boat face, or something wrong like John Wayne, but misspelled in this case. Oops, it was the wrong button. Or yeah, some people don't really like filling out surveys, so they say, it's none of your goddamn business. And I put a swear word in it because Melissa data can actually detect if there's vulgarity in your data. And I was really interested to see if it would pick this one out. So I apologize if I offended someone. Just to test, it's all for the science. All right, so again, the configuration was pretty simple. It automatically puts all of those output fields in them. So I just had to select the name field, and that's it. Right, so and then I could configure the pass-through, and then output was pretty much the same as with address data. So if I run this, it will try to read the data, it will go to the web service. And then, I know this one goes to the on-premises database, if I'm not mistaken. So here I can see, okay, it detected the prefix correctly. It didn't do it for the Belgian one, which I can forgive, but because it's typically Belgian. With the two Mr. and Mrs., yeah, it messed up a little bit, but it did correct. It did find that there was a male and a female over here. And here in the second one with the abbreviations, it was fully correct. It says everything is okay. Like this one is the name of the male, and this one is the name of the female, of the woman. And he also tries to detect the gender. So he knows my name is apparently the name typically of a male. Some he doesn't know. He says, okay, this is neutral. Otherwise, it's okay, this one is definitely female. And like the jokers, those are unknown. And here you can see that he corrected John Wayne. So John was misspelled, and here it says, okay, I think we should write John this way. And we go over here again. He tries to guess the gender over here. It gives a salutation, and again result codes, and so on and so on. So overall, again, pretty satisfied with the results. It's not 100% perfect, but again, this is real hard stuff to do. With Melissa data tools, I just have to click, 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 and I'm done, and I already get results which are like 95% okay, correct. While if you had to do this yourself using T-SQL or .NET, it will take you a much, much longer time to get even results that are half as good as this one. All right, I'm just gonna go to the last demo, and then we'll go back to the slides. So here I'm using emails, again, toying around with data quality a little bit. So first, an email address, which doesn't really exist. Then I misspelled it over here with two symbols. Here I forgot the M over here. Here, this is a typically Belgian email address. And again, people hate filling out survey data. Says, don't email me at invalid.com. And then this one is an actually invalid email because it doesn't have like a domain. All right, so the global verify using a web service. We go to email. This is say, okay, this is our input. And depending on your license, you can get an express mode or a premium mode. In the premium mode, it will also try to really validate, like, is this an email address that actually exists? And we can send an email to it. And the express mode is just, okay, you validate against a database of known domains and stuff like that. And as with all the other components and data that we can parse, you can get extra information. So we can get more information about the domain, for example, top domain and stuff like that. We also get a confidence of how sure is Melissa data that this is an actual email address or not. All right, again, we can configure pass-through, and we can configure outputs and the result codes. All right, so I can execute this one over here. Should be fairly quick. So when we take a look, we see over here, I just have to make that a little bit bigger, sorry. So here it says, okay, this was okay. He corrected, so there's only one at over here, and he knows, okay, Yahoo should be .com and not .co. And all the other ones are just, he left them as is. It's okay, this is like the mailbox, this is the domain, this is the top domain. You can give some extra information like, okay, this one is from Belgium, the other ones are commercial. And he assigns a score of, okay, this one is 80% sure that it's a correct email address. This one only 68. This one 0 means she's definitely sure because you cannot send an email to it, and so on. You get a domain email. Apparently invalid.com is an existing domain with an existing domain email. And if possible, you can also assign a domain organization. And again, we get some result codes, which we'll take a closer look at in the slides. All right, so back to the names. So here it says, okay, I parsed the name successfully, or I detected some error. And then he also can distinguish, like, are there two persons in the names? Do we have like the first name and a last name, and the first name, second one, and the last name, second one? And he'll give you codes if he actually found that, okay, there are two people in these names. And as I mentioned, it can detect there is vulgarity, so I get a result code for that one. And then we have the emails, and again, you get different codes saying, okay, this one was converted by a database lookup or some other lookup. He also thinks this email address, it might be a group. It's like it's an email that goes to multiple people, like for example, sales, that's MSSQLTIPS.com, or finance, that's Microsoft.com or something. That's a mailbox that reaches multiple people. It says, okay, I changed the syntax. In this case, he he removed the double @ and he changed it to .com for the Yahoo. That's the second one. I changed the domain name, and he thinks, okay, mailbox name is valid with medium confidence, and then a special error code, which I don't really know what it means. And you can have more information about emails on this wiki page that I'll link to over here. Right. There was normally a last demo about how do you call it? Just gonna go to Visual Studio because I can't find the words about profiling data. I'm just gonna go very quickly. I can't do the full demo because it takes quite some time to run. But you can just read some data, and then you can select which column you want to profile, and then you can have specific analysis options that you can say, okay, try to do this, this, and this. And if you choose data aggregation over here, it takes quite some time to run. It takes like a couple of minutes to run, which is quite some time, right? So the advantage of using the data profile component of Melissa Data is that it is a data flow component. So you have a built-in profiling component in integration services, but this one is a control flow component. So you need to configure it, and it will read the data and do the analysis, and it will write the output to some XML file, of which you need to use another tool to read that XML data and then find out, okay, I have some SQL over here, yeah, that I want to show you. So with the built-in profiling component, it's control flow only. You don't see the actual data. You run it, and then you need a separate tool. So it's all very manual. While with the Melissa Data component, you can just run it, and then you can actually see the output, and you can write it to whatever destination that you want. So in this case, I wrote it to my SQL Server table. So lots of output over here. So for each column, we will inspect each value, and then it will count how many times it occurs. Of course, the ID column is unique, so it will always be 1. But here you can see, like, so it's all Stack Overflow data, if you're wondering. So here we have like data that is not always unique. Then the other table are more column specifics. Okay, this is the data type, and it's unique counts and default values count, distinct counts, most popular count. And for every column, you get extra columns in the output. You also, again, can count profanity, which is nice. And then you said, okay, this is medium value, maximum value, apart from it. So lots of statistical analysis of all of the data. And again, this is data flow output, so you can do with it what you want. All right, so this was very, very quickly the profiling component. It was not the key focus of today. So just gonna go over the slide. You have many result codes for the profile components. Oh, it was only alphabetical, only numeric. There was annual data, and so on and so on. All right, so Jeremy asked that I before I do my summary at the end, that we do a little poll with the audience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Koen. So I just want to ask everyone, would you like more information about the Melissa solution? So yes, a personal demo. So there again, work with someone on at the Melissa team to basically understand your data and understand your needs. 2, yes, an evaluation version. 3, yes, pricing information. 4, yes, more information, or not at this time. So if everyone could please take a minute to vote, we definitely would appreciate it. We do have a couple questions for you, Koen. So one question related to essentially like data exclusion. So as an example, let's just say you have domain.co and you don't want that included either as data that's either part of a profile session or updated as part of Personator as an example. Is that something you can configure in the Melissa solutions that you're aware of? To basically have a data exclusion list?
Sorry, now I'm unmuted, so I can actually answer. So the question is, if I understand correctly, so you have an email address, which, for example, the yahoo.co instead of .com, and you want to filter it out or something like that?
Yeah, if you could basically not include that as a part of your session or as a part of your data set.
Yeah, well, you can use them in combination, for example, that you first do some simple parsing using an email validation, and then it will have a specific result code saying, oh, I changed something in a domain, and then you know, oh, my input data was not 100% okay. And then you can, as I showed, you have like those output filters, and then you say, okay, output number 2, for example, are all the lines which have that specific result code, like where we changed something or gave an error, and then you can just send them those to separate outputs, and which you can just ignore in integration services. And then the ones that are validated, you can send them to the next component of Melissa data where you do more in-depth analysis on that email or address or whatever.
Awesome, thank you. I've also passed out a URL to everyone in the community that basically references a page out on MSSQLTIPS where you can basically get some more information about the Melissa solutions. On the left side is some information about the Melissa tools, and on the right side there are some related resources. So it's definitely another resource people can check out and learn some more. So if everyone could please take a minute to vote, we definitely would appreciate it. And we'll go ahead here and wrap up. I know we're running a little bit over on time today, but if everyone could please vote. From here, we'll go ahead and have Koen continue. All right, we've already got 10 more seconds. All right, Koen, back over to you. Please go ahead and finish up.
Yeah, you can see my slide just for confirmation.
Yep, I'm still on the poll slide, yes.
All right, so conclusion of today's webinar. My experience was that the Melissa data tools are very easy to install. It's basically next, finish. And to use as well, well, you just define your input and then you go over the output. And maybe you do some couple of iterations to see what output is exactly useful to your use case of the data that you have. Because not every enrichment output column will have some actual data in it. It kind of depends on your country and how good your data is. So you just go over those, but you just configure the outputs, and then you just configure maybe some filters, but they're quite easy to configure. I had no problems connecting to web servers or whatever. Everything works just out of the box. There is some documentation on the wiki side and stuff like that. As I mentioned, some components are on-premises, some are online. So the on-premises component will probably be the fastest, of course. You don't need internet. But of course, the reference data set is sort of, how do you call it, like it can become stale over time if you don't update, for example, while the web services will probably always have the most up-to-date data. So you need to make some trade-off. I think the Melissa data tools are definitely an asset for parsing data, verifying and validating data. So it just doesn't, as I mentioned multiple times, it doesn't parse the data like address data, like, oh, it looks like this is the street and a house number and a postal code, but it also checks, is this an actual address that exists in that country? If you send a letter to it, will it arrive? Because if you do a mass marketing campaign, and if you have lots of letters coming back, that is a huge cost and a huge loss for your marketing domains. You want to minimize those costs as much as possible. And I really think that Melissa data will definitely help you with this. All right, so I have some resources, so the slides will be made available. So there are some tips on the MSSQLTIPS website which talk about Melissa data. And I want to specifically draw your attention to the webcast by Ray Barley, which is called Cleaning, Validating, and Enhancing the SQL Server Data Warehouse Contact Dimension, which is a full hour webinar which you can watch for free on the MSSQLTIPS website, where Ray specifically talks about, okay, we have contact information coming out, some CRM tool or whatever, and he explains step by step how you can implement this in your data warehouses. He says, okay, this is how you configure your components of Melissa data, and then this is how you configure your output filters so that you have multiple staging tables for data that is 100% verified, data that is like partially verified, and so on. And he gives you the SQL on how to update your contact dimension in the data warehouse. So I think it was a very interesting webinar to watch, and I would definitely recommend it if you want to use the Melissa data components for cleaning up data in your data warehouse. Right, so this is the end of the webinar, so I give it back to you, Jeremy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Koen. Definitely want to thank you for all the time you put into this session for the demonstration of Melissa's SSIS data quality solution. Also want to thank everybody from the community today for joining today's session. As a reminder, today's webcast was recorded and we will be sending emails for you to check out the archive and download the slides. This is Jeremy Cadlick. Have a great day and please tell us about MS SQL Tips. Thank you.